Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the sun-bleached heart of 19th century Brazil, where the sky stretches wider than your dreams and the ground cracks under your feet like it's too tired to hold the weight of history. The air smells of dust and wood smoke, the rivers are dry, the towns are smaller than a football pitch, and somewhere in this forgotten wasteland, a barefoot man with wild eyes and a matted beard is walking. Again. Always walking. He walks until his sandals fall apart. Then he walks barefoot. No one really knows where he's headed, and maybe he doesn't either. But crowds begin to follow. They call him the counselor. Now listen, you probably won't survive this. Not the heat, not the starvation, not the wars, and definitely not the fanatical dreams that tear nations apart. But tonight, you're just here to listen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with your location and local time. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through a brittle field under the Bahian sun, your feet sore and blistered. Around you, the sertão, the backlands of northeast Brazil, roll out like a ragged quilt of dust, thorny scrub, and stubborn goat trails. It's a place of extremes: fire without rain, faith without mercy, life without guarantees. This is not the Brazil of beaches and samba. This is the Brazil of starvation, bandits, and messiahs. The year is 1874. The empire of Brazil is wobbling under its own contradictions. Slavery is still legal, but abolition whispers are everywhere. Monarchists sit awkwardly beside Republicans in town halls. The Catholic Church still has power, but now competes with growing secular liberalism. The poor are taxed, ignored, and dying slowly in this desert. That's where you come in. You're not rich, not educated, not powerful. You work the land when it rains and pray when it doesn't. Then, one morning, word spreads. A holy man is passing through the next village. He repairs crosses, quotes scripture, and blesses the sick. Some say he predicts the future. Others say he talks to saints. So you go. You walk 20 miles with only a crust of bread in your pocket, and when you finally see him, he's not what you expected. He's tall, thin like a fence post, sunburnt. Wrapped in rags and rope, he looks more like a scarecrow than a prophet. His beard is tangled, his hair wild. But when he speaks, people cry. He quotes psalms in a sing-song rhythm that sounds like poetry and threat all at once. The Lord is a fortress, he says, and the poor shall inherit what was stolen. You're not sure what that means, but it feels true. That's how the legend begins. His real name is Antonio Vicente Mendes Maciel, born in 1830 in the state of Ceará. His life starts quietly, son of a small-town tradesman, once married, once educated, briefly. But then it all falls apart. His wife leaves. His business fails. He's mocked, cast out, and broken. Something snaps, and instead of rebuilding, he walks away. Literally. He grabs a Bible, a wooden staff, and starts walking through Brazil. For years, town to town, preaching, repairing chapels, digging graves, building crosses, feeding orphans. No one pays him. He refuses wages, refuses homes, refuses rest. He becomes unsettling. And because this is a time when rural Brazil is full of wandering prophets, mystics, and self-proclaimed saints, most people write him off at first. But then, something odd happens. He starts gaining followers, real ones, peasants, widows, ex-slaves. They drop everything and walk behind him. They call him Conselheiro, the counselor. They think he's sent by God. He says very little about himself. But when he preaches, he says big things, that the world is broken, that the poor are being punished for sins they didn't commit, and that judgment is coming. To the landowning elite, he sounds dangerous. To you, sweating under that Bahian sun, hungry and exhausted, he sounds like hope. You trail behind him, town to town. You watch him get arrested and released, condemned and ignored. He never fights, just walks on. The countryside starts to change in his wake. People build shrines where he visits. Villages become pilgrimage sites. Landowners get nervous. Priests call him a heretic. But his crowds keep growing. And one day, near the banks of the Vazabaras River, in a spot where no one lives and the cacti grow like cursed trees, he stops. This is the place, he says. You look around. There's nothing here. No crops, no water, just thorn bushes and a few vultures circling overhead. But he raises a wooden cross, drives it into the ground, and starts to build. Other hands join in. You pile rocks, you dig, you thatch a roof from palm fronds. Within days, there's a chapel. Within weeks, tenths. Within months, hundreds. You are no longer in the backlands. You're in Canudos, and it's only just begun. The sun keeps burning above Canudos, but now there's shade, cloth strung between poles, branches lashed into shelters, and even the beginnings of mud walls packed by hand. You squat beside a fire with a tin cup of stale water, watching barefoot figures shuffle in from every direction. It's like ants finding sugar. Nobody told them where to go, and yet, here they are. And at the center of it all is him, Antônio Conselheiro. He walks slowly through the camp, blessing children, murmuring verses, nodding silently when strangers sob into his robes. He never smiles, never laughs. But his presence is magnetic, like standing beside a tree just before it's struck by lightning. He holds no office. He carries no weapon. But the people call him father, prophet, king. His Bible is torn at the edges, annotated with notes you're not allowed to read. And somehow, this man with no army, no money, and no plan is building a society that doesn't look like anything Brazil has seen before. Every evening, just as the heat dies and the goats stop bleeding, he preaches under a crooked tree. His voice is raspy and slow, like it's carried from some deeper world. He speaks of John the Baptist, of deserts and martyrs, of the poor lifted up and the proud brought low. Sometimes he warns of coming apocalypse. Other times he just reads the Gospels like bedtime stories. And people listen. Because you've never seen a priest cry when reading about Lazarus. You've never heard someone speak of Christ like they met him this morning. But not everyone's comforted. A few mutter about how he never performs Mass, that he has no priestly orders, that he never accepts communion. It's true. Conselheiro preaches Catholicism, but it's not the one Rome would recognize. He believes the monarchy is sacred, that the new Brazilian Republic is Satan's trick, that the Pope has been betrayed by modernists, that the apocalypse is coming soon, and that Canudos must prepare. Mainstream historians agree. Conselheiro's worldview was wildly conservative, almost medieval in its obsession with royal authority and divine punishment. But he wasn't a politician. He didn't write manifestos. He just repeated the same vision. God above, king on earth, poor protected, wicked punished. And the government? It ignored him at first. I mean, what's a barefoot preacher with some followers in the desert? Not a threat, not a headline. He was a side note. But that changed quickly. Word spread, all over Bahia and beyond. People said he was healing the sick, that water flowed where he walked, that bullets couldn't harm his followers. These are the fringe details, half myth, half wishful thinking. Historians still argue whether these stories were exaggerated by Canudos' defenders or by its enemies to paint them as fanatics. Either way, you start to feel it too. This place is different. You help dig a well. The water's cleaner than anywhere else you've drunk from. A baby recovers from fever. A crippled man walks again. Are they miracles? Coincidences? Or maybe just the power of belief and fresh air? Still, you wonder about him. When does he sleep? What does he want? One night, you catch a glimpse of him alone, kneeling in the dirt, whispering. Not to the sky, but to the ground. You hear? Let them hold fast. He's not talking to anyone in particular. Or maybe he's talking to God. Soon, his followers wear blue robes, grow out their beards, and adopt rules. No alcohol, no lying, no swearing, no stealing. There are punishments, sure, but mostly public shaming and penance. Conselheiro believes judgment belongs to God, not men. So there's little violence, no police, no jails. It sounds like a utopia. It feels like one. But that word, utopia, it hides how hard this is. You work from sunrise to collapse. You eat little. You sleep on dirt. There are snakes, fevers, coughing fits that never quite stop. Yet people keep arriving. Ex-slaves, orphans, bandits who bury their weapons and ask for a second chance. And still, Conselheiro keeps walking. Some mornings he's nowhere to be seen. Off in the hills, fasting and praying. Other days he leads processions, chanting psalms, hoisting wooden crosses, walking for hours barefoot in silence. There's no money in Canudos, no taxes. Goods are traded, labor is communal, food is shared. Outsiders call it madness, or worse, heresy. The church finally takes notice. The Archdiocese of Salvador labels him a false prophet, a manipulator, a lunatic. They say he's misleading the poor with twisted doctrine and should be stopped. But by now, Canudos has a population of 4,000. That's more than some towns. A few local priests even defect to join the movement. One is Father Joaquim, who claims God told him Canudos will be the only city to survive the end of the world. Even if you don't believe that, it's hard to ignore that something's happening here, something bigger than you. One morning, you find yourself standing at the edge of the village. The wind is still. Dust coats your tongue. You see a woman building a brick oven with her children, singing softly. A man pulls water from the well and offers it to a stranger. Behind them, the chapel's frame rises higher. Wood carved with saints, roof thatched with palm leaves. And in the distance, a line of newcomers trudges across the hills, shadows against the baking sky. They've heard of Canudos, and they're coming. The mornings in Canudos start early, before the sun crests the hills, before the goats begin their low grumbles. You rise to the soft scrape of sandals on dirt and the sound of women ladling water from barrels, of hammers thudding on clay bricks. It's not peaceful exactly, but there's rhythm. What once was scrubland is now a living town. Not a temporary camp, not a caravan of fanatics, but a full-blown settlement. You watch as families stake out their patches of land. They dig trenches for latrines, mark off space for a market square, and raise thick-walled houses from adobe. One man claims to be an architect, or at least he says he built a church once, and under his guidance, the whole place starts to bloom. That's what it feels like. Blooming. Every day, more people arrive. Gaunt-eyed women with children strapped to their backs, old men with scarred hands, former slaves looking for a place to breathe. Some come from hundreds of miles away, others from the next dusty village over. They arrive hungry, broken, some with nothing but the names of their dead. And when they step into Canudos, they collapse into tears, not from joy, but relief. You help them find space to sleep. You share food, water, blankets. You repeat the strange rules that now feel like second nature. No liquor, no idleness, no stealing, no vanity. And always, respect for the counselor. Antonio doesn't rule Canudos like a king. There's no crown, no throne, no orders barked from balconies. But somehow, everything runs because of him. He decides where buildings go, when the harvest should be planted, how disputes are settled. His decisions feel more like gospel than law. And yet, you never hear him shout. He walks, he listens, he preaches, sometimes for hours. His sermons are less about doctrine and more like spells, slow, winding stories, warnings about the sins of the world, and promises that Canudos is protected as long as the people stay pure. Not everyone agrees on what pure means, of course. Historians still argue whether Conselheiro was genuinely creating a utopia or enforcing a rigid theocracy that punished dissent. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. You see kindness here, but also fear. Some people whisper about neighbors who are quietly asked to leave. A few women are pressured into giving up bright dresses. A traveling vendor is turned away for selling newspapers. But the core of Canudos holds steady. Even the buildings speak of purpose. The chapel now has doors made of real wood, engraved with crosses and vines. A small bakery pumps out rough loaves of cornbread. A school is being discussed, though no one quite knows how to teach yet. The most surprising sight? A blacksmith's forge. Smoke curls into the blue sky as two former slaves hammer out nails from salvaged iron. Tools, hinges, even a bell for the chapel tower, it all comes from this miracle of fire. And at the edge of the town, people build something stranger still, a graveyard. It's oddly beautiful. A stone wall, handmade wooden markers, crosses carved with care. You walk past it one morning and see a woman singing over a grave. She hums a lullaby and pats the dirt like it's a baby's back. Death in Canudos isn't hidden, it's honored. But there's tension brewing, too. You hear it in the gossip between traders and the way travelers lower their voices when they speak of the outside world. Word has reached the towns and cities. Canudos isn't just a curiosity anymore. It's being painted as a problem. The newspapers call it a nest of sedition. Politicians refer to it as a dangerous anomaly. The church insists that Conselheiro is warping the gospel. Even stranger, some whisper that Canudos is preparing to march on the Republic. It's laughable, of course. No one here talks about war. There are no armies, just farmers, builders, a few rifles from old soldiers. But the rumors spread faster than truth. And then comes the straw that breaks it all. One day, word arrives. Conselheiro has ordered 400 wooden crosses from a carpenter in nearby Juazeiro. That's it. Just crosses. But when the carpenter refuses to deliver, blaming government pressure, Canudos sends a group to retrieve them. Not an army, just men with carts. Still, someone, no one knows who, fires a gun. A brief fight breaks out. The army stationed troops retreat. A soldier dies, and the press goes wild. Canudos rebels, the headlines scream. The Republic attacked by monarchist fanatics. None of that is true, but truth is now beside the point. Back in Canudos, Conselheiro keeps preaching. If he's worried, he doesn't show it. He tells you the world is reacting because Canudos is righteous. That persecution is proof of purity. You want to believe him. You really do. But late at night, you hear murmurs near the forge. Men working longer, sharpening tools, stockpiling nails and metal scraps. And one morning, you see it clearly. A teenager holding a rough-made spear, practicing swings against a tree. No one's declaring war, but war is arriving all the same. Still, you build, you dig, you help raise walls and strengthen roofs, you hold on to the rhythm, because this is your home now, this dusty, holy, hand-built miracle in the middle of nowhere. And whether it's a utopia, a cult, or something in between, one thing is certain, you'd rather die here than live anywhere else. The air feels heavier now in Canudos, not from heat, though the sun still beats down like it's trying to flatten you, but from something else, something you can't name. Tension? Dread? You go about your routines, fetching water, patching walls, sharing meals from communal pots. But the quiet glances, the whispers between neighbors, the way hands linger a little longer on doorframes all say the same thing. People are scared. Not of Conselheiro. No one fears him, but of what's coming for him. Because the church has had enough. It starts with rumors that the Bishop of Bahia has issued a public condemnation, that local priests are warning their congregations to steer clear of the Canudos heresy, that the Vatican itself might be watching. You don't know if any of it's true. But the effect is real. Missionaries who once came out of curiosity now stay away. Priests send letters to the government. Suddenly, sermons in nearby towns are full of phrases like false prophets and Satan in sandals. And let's be clear, Antônio Conselheiro has never exactly played nice with the church. He refuses to take communion. He preaches that priests are corrupted. He claims the Republican government is the Antichrist and says the church is failing by cooperating with it. He doesn't believe in state marriage, or state anything, really. The church hates that. And it hates how many people are listening to him. Because Canudos is no longer a fringe oddity. The population has exploded, 5,000, maybe 10,000 souls. Nobody can count them all. Not everyone is a believer either. Some just want to eat, to live in peace, but they follow the rules, and that's what matters. Conselheiro keeps walking the town barefoot, robes fluttering, beard tangled, staff in hand. He never gives speeches about power, never calls himself king, but he speaks with certainty, with a voice that makes you want to believe. He tells you the Republic is doomed, that the world outside is falling, that Canudos will stand when all else crumbles, and you want that to be true. But then come the letters, real printed letters from the outside world, from city halls and military garrisons and even newspapers. They say Canudos is dangerous, that it's hoarding weapons, that it's sheltering monarchist rebels, that Conselheiro wants to raise an army and bring back the empire. None of this has happened. You know that. You live here. You plant beans, you repair sandals, you sing hymns while sweeping dirt floors. There is no conspiracy. But the letters don't ask, they accuse. And now the church has officially declared Conselheiro a heretic, not in whispers, but in print. In Salvador, priests read proclamations warning Catholics to avoid Canudos. They say Conselheiro is an enemy of God, that his sermons twist scripture, and that he threatens the church's authority. Historians still debate how much of this was true and how much was politics. Some say the church feared losing its monopoly on the poor. Others believe it genuinely saw Conselheiro's growing influence as a spiritual danger. Either way, the result was the same. They wanted him silenced, and the government, still fragile and desperate to prove itself, was happy to help. You hear stories from newcomers arriving in Canudos, soldiers stationed nearby, police asking questions, priests warning villages not to offer aid. And you begin to understand something no one is saying aloud. They're going to try and destroy this place. You look around and see why. The buildings now stretch in every direction. The chapel has a bell tower, handmade from stone. There's a schoolhouse now, barely a room with benches, but it teaches kids to read. The bakery smells of fresh loaves, chickens strut between water barrels, someone's even painted flowers on the wall of the hospital tent. This place, this dream, it works. And that's the threat. Because if the poor can govern themselves here, with no taxes, no landlords, no officials, no priests, no money, what happens when other poor people hear about it? In Brazil, inequality isn't a bug in the system. It is the system. You and others begin preparing quietly, not for war, not yet, but for siege. You build new storage pits, dry more beans, hide tools, fortify the perimeter. Some people dig trenches around the hills. Others build lookout posts. You still pray, still sing, still gather around Conselheiro's sermons. But now when you gather, you hold your children a little closer. One afternoon, he speaks for nearly 2 hours beneath the sun. He barely moves, just holds his Bible open and lets his voice echo. They will come, he says softly, because they do not understand us. They will come with fire, and we will answer with faith. That night, the forge glows brighter than usual, and the sound of hammers rings deep into the dark. Canudos no longer feels like a secret. It feels like a challenge. Every path in or out now comes with eyes. Soldiers begin to circle, not attacking, just watching. Scouts spot them on ridgelines, slouching behind scrub, their rifles glinting in the sun like sharpened teeth. You pretend not to notice. You keep laying bricks. You help the women haul water. You press your hands into clay and tell the children that Canudos is still safe. But it's not. And everyone knows it. One morning you wake to the sound of distant hoofbeats. Not the gentle clip-clop of pilgrims. These are different, fast, heavy, intentional. A group of armed men ride into view, uniforms dusty but clear, soldiers. Not the federal army, not yet, but the first wave. They come on behalf of the Republic, they say. Just checking in, asking questions, counting people, asking for names. Conselheiro doesn't greet them. He's in seclusion again, fasting in the chapel. So the villagers, unsure how to respond, offer food, water, hospitality. But the soldiers are suspicious. They poke around. They note the walls, the stockpiles of grain, the forge. One lingers over a pile of sharpened tools and mumbles something about weapons. They leave, but not before marking the road. And a few days later, the army returns. Not riders this time, marching soldiers in full uniform, armed with rifles and strict orders. This is it, the first expedition. About 100 men sent from Bahia under the command of a young officer named Pires Ferreira. They've come to deliver a message. Canudos must disband. Conselheiro must surrender. The Republic will not tolerate rebellion. You gather with the others as a small delegation walks out to meet them, hands open, voices calm. We are not rebels, they say. We only wish to live in peace. The soldiers aren't listening. The officer demands the town's dissolution. He calls Canudos illegal, its existence a threat. He says the state is watching and it will act. The delegation tries to explain, this isn't rebellion, it's refuge. But words aren't what the Republic came for. The standoff ends quickly. Some say a shot was fired by accident. Others insist it was a trap. Historians still argue about who pulled the trigger first. But what everyone agrees on is what came next. Chaos, gunfire, screaming, running. The first shots echo off the hills, bouncing like thunder. The villagers scramble. You duck behind a wall. You see a boy no older than 10, standing still in the street, too stunned to move. He survives. Others don't. But something incredible happens. The soldiers retreat. It shouldn't have happened. They had training, weapons, orders, but they panic. They fall back. Some claim it was fear. Others claim divine intervention. A few say the heat drove them mad. The army retreats, and suddenly, Canudos becomes more than a town. It becomes a legend. Newspapers in the cities lose their minds. Republican army defeated by fanatics. Bandits repel soldiers in Bahia. Canudos defies government. The details are wrong, wildly wrong. They say Conselheiro led the charge with a sword. They say Canudos is backed by monarchists from Europe. They say priests are being sacrificed in blood rituals. It's absurd, but people eat it up. The myth of Canudos spreads like wildfire. In the cities, you are monsters. In the backlands, you are saints. And Conselheiro? He says nothing about victory. He just kneels in the chapel, head bowed. But the people rally. They repair what was broken. They patch bullet holes. They pray louder, sing longer, work harder. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And everyone knows what happens next. The Republic, embarrassed and furious, will not let this go. They'll send more. You know it. Conselheiro knows it. And yet, when he finally speaks again, his voice is calm. Prepare your hearts. What is built with faith cannot be broken by fear. You believe him. And so, with trembling hands and dry lips, you begin helping to dig the first trenches. The clay under your fingernails is permanent now. No matter how often you wash your hands, it's there, in the cracks of your skin, like the dirt itself is claiming you. You spend your mornings building, your afternoons digging, and your nights listening to distant footsteps that might be wind or might be soldiers. Canudos is growing, but it's no longer just growing upward, it's growing inward. Walls are thickened, streets are narrowed, entrances to the village become choke points, surrounded by watchtowers made of stone and wood. Every able hand is put to work. Even the children help carry bricks and fetch water. You work beside an old mason who once built churches in Salvador. He teaches you to stack adobe bricks at an angle so the rain won't wear them down. This one, he says, patting a half-finished wall, will be here after we're gone. It feels strange, building something permanent in a place so threatened. But then again, Canudos was never just a town. It's a belief, and belief makes people do impossible things. Soon, the hills around Canudos are dotted with sentries. Thin boys with rifles too big for their shoulders. Old men with powder pouches sewn into their belts. Women who carry stones in baskets for quick defense. There's no formal army, no drills, no uniforms. But there is resolve. You sharpen tools that might become weapons. You help boil water and pour it into clay jars for emergencies. You learn how to wrap wounds. Every house becomes a fortress. Every alley, a trap. And in the center of it all, Conselheiro. He doesn't give orders. He gives presents. He walks through Canudos every day, barefoot, staff in hand, robes dragging in the dust. He says little, but when he does speak, it's scripture or warnings. The end is near, he says one evening, standing beneath a storm cloud sky. But it will not be the end for us. Some people nod, others weep. You just try to memorize his words like armor, because the outside world is stirring again. The second expedition comes like clockwork. This time it's bigger, over 500 men, led by Major Fabronio de Brito. They march with confidence. They've read the newspapers. They believe Canudos is a joke. They're not laughing long. This time, Canudos doesn't wait for them to enter. A group of defenders ambushes them near Uawa, a village en route. They use surprise, terrain, and home-built weapons, and somehow, they win again. The Republic is humiliated, again. This time, newspapers demand blood. They are not citizens, one paper writes. They are insurgents. Send more men. Burn them out. You read these quotes secondhand from visitors bringing letters. You hear rumors of new troops preparing. But inside Canudos, something else happens. More people arrive. Hundreds, farmers, blacksmiths, monks, laborers, entire families. They come not in fear, but in faith. Canudos, in their eyes, has become proof that the weak can survive, proof that God protects the faithful, proof that maybe, just maybe, Conselheiro is more than a man. You don't know how to feel about that. One evening, you're sitting near the chapel, exhausted, sipping warm water from a clay cup. A girl beside you, maybe 11 years old, says, "Do you think the counselor sees the future?" You pause, then nod, because maybe he does. The town now runs on something more than clay and labor. It runs on discipline. Strict codes begin to solidify. No alcohol, no gambling, no tobacco. Work is assigned. Meetings are held. Disputes settled by a council of elders. Food is rationed fairly. Money disappears. Literally, Conselheiro claims coins are cursed, symbols of greed. People melt them down or bury them. In Canudos, value is measured by contribution, not coin. Historians later marvel at this. A full economy functioning without currency in 19th century Brazil. They still argue whether it was sustainable or a slow collapse masked by idealism. But you don't feel collapse. You feel purpose. And maybe a little fear, because something's shifting. The wind carries more dust than usual. The sky feels closer. You start noticing the small things. Cracks in walls, empty soup pots, tired hands that shake more than they used to. The third expedition is coming. You hear it in the way the animals grow restless. You see it in the face of a young mother patching a hole in her roof. Again, like it won't matter soon. Still, you work, because heaven, in Canudos, runs on clay bricks. You wake up to the smell of gunpowder. Not from an explosion yet, but from the faint tang it leaves behind in the air, like ash after a lightning strike. The third expedition has arrived. This time, they don't knock. They come in fast in waves, Over 1,200 soldiers sent by the federal government and led by Colonel Moreira Cesar, a hardened war hero with a taste for drama and an ego large enough to fill the valley. You hear his name whispered by newcomers. He's the one who crushed the monarchist revolts, someone says, never lost a battle. Another voice mutters, never fought people like us. Still, this is different. This isn't a warning party or a probe. This is a full-on declaration. The Republic is panicking. Canudos has embarrassed them twice. Now it has to be wiped from the map, not just to win, but to prove they're still in control. And if thousands of peasants have to die to make that point, so be it. The army camps nearby, just over the ridge. You spot their fires glowing like embers in the night. By morning, they move closer, forming columns, setting up artillery. You help carry water to the lookouts. You reinforce the chapel's windows with thick slabs of wood. Conselheiro walks among the people, silent, sometimes humming fragments of hymns. He's thinner than before, paler. Some say he hasn't eaten in days. He stands before the chapel as the first cannon fires. It whistles through the air like a scream, then slams into a stone wall near the forge. No one dies, but it begins. The Battle of Canudos, third attempt. At first, it's chaos. Gunshots echo like thunderclaps. Dust clouds swirl through the narrow streets. You run messages between homes, hands trembling, ears ringing. But somehow, Canudos holds. You fortified the terrain, narrowed the streets, set traps in the underbrush. The soldiers, trained for open field battle, are funneled into tight alleyways where old men with hunting rifles and young women with stones hold them back. There's no general, no formal command, just instinct, courage, and rage. Colonel Moreira Cesar is furious. He orders an all-out charge. The people of Canudos answer not with strategy, but with fury. The fighting lasts for days, then a week, then more. Your hands blister from digging trenches by moonlight. You eat once a day, maybe. Water runs low, powder runs lower. But you keep going. Then everything changes. Colonel Moreira Cesar is shot. A single bullet from an unknown shooter. Some say it was a boy, perched in a tree. Others claim it was a veteran with one bullet left and a prayer. Either way, the great war hero falls, and his army falls apart. Panic spreads. Soldiers retreat. Some abandon their weapons. Others melt into the hills. You stand at the edge of the town and watch their uniforms disappear into dust. It's impossible. You've beaten the Republic again. Back inside, the people rejoice. But it's not a party. It's grief mixed with awe. You bury the fallen, patch walls, boil herbs for the wounded. Conselheiro, barely standing, emerges from the chapel. He doesn't cheer. He doesn't smile. He just says, "The Lord is a shield for those who trust him," and collapses. He's carried away, fevered and frail. You don't know if he'll wake, but the town wakes, because now Canudos is legend. In the backlands, you are saints. In the capital, you are monsters. The government declares martial law. Newspapers scream for vengeance. Priests preach that God will smite this heresy. And you, sitting in the dirt with a tin cup and bleeding knuckles, know exactly what's coming next. The fourth expedition. And this time, they're not coming to fight. They're coming to erase. The sky turns gray before the soldiers do. A thick curtain of clouds that hangs over Canudos like an omen, or maybe just mercy. After weeks of blistering heat, the air cools. But the cool doesn't comfort you. It sharpens your senses. You've seen 3 armies, watched them arrive with rifles and arrogance, only to leave in shame or silence. But this one is different. They don't just march. They crawl over the horizon like a plague. Thousands of them. Not a few hundred, not even 1,000. 5,000 troops, the largest army Brazil has assembled since its independence. Artillery, Gatling guns, engineers, medics, and most telling of all, reporters. The Republic is done playing defense. They've sent General Artur Oscar de Andrade Guimarães, older, slower, but ruthless and methodical. He's not coming to subdue. He's coming to flatten. You watch their campfires from the ridge that night, spread out like stars. So many stars. Too many. In Canudos, there are no speeches, no rally cries, just quiet. People reinforcing walls, mothers holding their children tighter. Conselheiro hasn't spoken in days. He lies on a mat inside the chapel, gaunt, feverish, whispering scripture like a lullaby to himself. You sit near the door listening. "And they shall be tried in fire," he says again and again. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows he's dying. And without him, Canudos is a body without a spine. Still, you prepare. The defenses are improved, trench lines around the perimeter, Barricades of stone and wood, barrels of rainwater cached in cellars. A blacksmith jury rigs a cannon from scrap metal. It barely works, but it's something. You sleep in shifts. The air tastes like copper. Then, before dawn, it begins. The fourth campaign. It's not a battle. It's a siege. The soldiers don't rush in. They encircle Canudos. They cut off water sources, block food routes, shell the town from the hills. Boom, boom, boom. Each shell falls like thunder. You stop flinching after the first 10. Then the numbness sets in. Dust, smoke, screams. The chapel's roof is torn open, the bakery gone, a line of huts collapsed into fire. You run, you help dig out survivors, you carry bodies, too many bodies, and all the while, the shelling continues. Some say it lasts 8 days before the infantry even tries to enter. When they do, they find traps, pits, spikes, walls that fall inward, crushing them, narrow alleys turned into shooting galleries. Canudos fights with everything. Rocks, sticks, boiling water, broken glass, teeth. You see a woman run into battle with a machete, screaming prayers as if they're bullets. And still, you hold the line. Because you believe. Because Canudos is not just dirt and walls. It's justice. It's the only place you've ever been where no one calls you less. But outside, the world spins its story. Newspapers print lies that you're monarchist rebels, cannibals, slaveholders, sorcerers. That Conselheiro is summoning demons. Historians still debate whether the government believed any of this, or just needed the public to. But it works. Volunteers flood the Republican Army. Donations pour in. Even children in Rio hold collections to save Brazil from Canudos. You are no longer citizens. You are a national threat. Inside, food runs out. You boil leather, chew bark, eat anything that won't kill you. Water is rationed by the spoonful. Children faint. Babies don't wake. You bury them in silence. Every night, Conselheiro's chapel flickers with candlelight. He doesn't speak now, just lies with his Bible on his chest, eyes half open, whispering verses from Revelation. You sit with him once. His hand is like dry paper. He looks at you, not through you, at you. And he says one thing, hold fast. That's the last time you hear his voice. The morning he dies, the wind changes. You don't hear a trumpet. There's no sudden storm. Just a breathless stillness, like even the air knows something sacred has ended. Antônio Conselheiro, the counselor, the prophet, the barefoot architect of Canudos, slips away quietly under a torn canvas in the back of the chapel. No final sermon, no dramatic farewell, just a long exhale and the silence that follows. You're there. You watch as his followers gently cover his body with the tattered blue robe he wore on his walks. They don't wail or tear their hair. They don't panic. They kneel. They pray, they sing. A slow, quivering hymn floats through the ruin of the chapel, cracked walls lit with thin beams of dust-filtered light. Though I walk through the valley, the words tremble, but they don't break. And neither does Canudos. Not yet. Even in death, Conselheiro holds the town together. You help carry his body, one of 12 chosen. He's buried behind the altar, where the floor is scorched and the stone tiles are blackened from shellfire. Someone carves a cross from a broken beam. It's rough and splintered and perfect. You place your hand on the dirt. It's warm. Outside, the siege continues, but something has shifted. The people of Canudos, the ones who called him father, prophet, saint, they don't fall apart. They harden. You see it in their eyes. There's no more doubt, no more whispered fears. There's only determination. Canudos will not surrender, not even now, not ever. The shelling resumes before sunset, louder than before. Like the sky is breaking. And for the first time, the soldiers begin to breach. They come in waves, hundreds at a time, through smoke and flame. And you fight, you throw stones, fire homemade slings, run messages, dig trenches with your hands. Children carry powder, mothers pass weapons. A blind man sings psalms at the top of his lungs while others shoot from the rubble. It's not strategy, it's survival. And still, somehow they are held back. Canudos fights street by street, rooftop by rooftop. One soldier later writes in his journal, "They do not fight like men. They fight like ghosts, like saints who've already died." It's meant as an insult. You take it as a blessing. But the truth is, it's not sustainable. The defenders are starving. Ammunition is almost gone. The forge lies cold. The bakery, rubble. The school, empty. And you begin to realize this isn't a war anymore. It's a ritual, a slow, sacred sacrifice. The Republic wants a message, and it will get one, no matter how much blood it takes. Historians still argue about this moment. Could a truce have been made after Consigliero's death? Could surrender have saved lives? Or was the hatred too deep, the fear of his ideas too strong? No one knows, but you know how it feels. It feels like the last light in the world is going out, and you're the one holding the candle. You wake each morning unsure if you'll see night. You sleep beside a broken window with a rock in your hand. You stop counting days, but you keep fighting, because Consigliero is dead, but his dream isn't. Not yet, and not while you're still breathing. There's no such thing as quiet anymore. Even at night, the ground hums. The cannons don't sleep. The guns don't rest. Somewhere, at every hour, someone is shouting, bleeding, running. Canudos is still standing, but just barely. Less a town now than a skeleton of one. You move through it like a ghost, weaving through broken homes, ducking under collapsed beams, stepping over craters the size of ox carts. You pass the bakery. Only half a wall remains. The chapel? It's more hole than roof, with fire-blackened stone and a jagged steeple that points at the sky like an accusation. But people are still here. They've stopped talking much. There's nothing new to say. The defenders are down to a few hundred. Most are wounded. Many are barely teens. Some are armed with sticks and knives. One boy fights with a broken musket he loads with crushed pottery and prayer. The women carry the dead now, and the living. You help where you can. Bandage where you can. Bury when you must. And the Republic keeps coming. The fourth expedition, now weeks in, becomes less a siege than an extermination. Soldiers advance by inches, using fire and brute force. They torch every structure, shoot anything that moves. Bayonets flash like the sun itself is stabbing the earth. Some still try to surrender. A group of old men waves white cloth from the hillside, only to be gunned down. A girl carrying her baby toward the soldiers is stabbed. The Republic has made up its mind. Canudos is not Brazil. It cannot be allowed to exist. You feel it in the way the attacks grow personal, in the way they shout, not surrender, but die, rebels. And still, you hold on. Because what's the alternative? You remember Consigliero's words, hold fast. So you hold fast. The last wells are dry. You drink from puddles or cracked barrels. A rotten yam is a treasure. One boy eats paper from a burnt Bible. And yet at night, people still sing. You lie in a collapsed home beside two strangers and listen to a cracked voice reciting the book of Revelation like it's bedtime poetry. The sky rolled back like a scroll. Even now, even here, beauty insists on being heard. Historians later compare Canudos to Masada, to Thermopylae, to the Alamo. But those places fell quickly. Canudos refuses. One officer in the Republican camp writes, they should have surrendered days ago, but they don't. They won't. They're not fighting to win. They're fighting because they believe. And that scares him more than any weapon. But your body is failing. You haven't eaten in 2 days. Your lips are cracked, your feet blistered. Your clothes hang off you like wet rags. And one afternoon, you see a sight that almost breaks you. A line of villagers, children, elders, women, digging graves for themselves. Quietly. Not in surrender, in preparation. Because death here has rules. It must be met with dignity. Still, you do not cry. You have no water left to spare. You just pick up a shovel and dig. Because this is the end. But it's not meaningless. You've lived in a place that tried, that believed. And no cannon can erase that. You don't hear the final charge. You feel it. The air doesn't shake. It snaps. Like the moment before a storm when the sky holds its breath. Then the hills erupt. Gunfire pours from the ridge like rain. Cannons pound. Shouting men descend in waves. Hundreds, maybe thousands. You run, not away, but toward the chapel, toward the only thing that still feels like a center. Others run with you. No one screams anymore. That's long past. This isn't panic. This is resolve. You know this is it. Canudos has survived months of siege, but it cannot survive this. Not the full weight of the Republic. Not after the food is gone, the wells are dry, and the prophet lies in the ground beneath the ruins. You duck behind a shattered wall. You watch as a boy, 12 maybe, hurls a stone and is cut down instantly. A mother holds her daughter beneath a table as bullets punch through the walls around them like hail. They don't move again. Somewhere, someone lights the last of the homemade explosives. The forge is long gone, but a few powder horns remain. The blast collapses a street corner, trapping a squad of soldiers. The defenders cheer, once, then silence again. The Republic advances through fire and prayer and fists. You help carry a wounded man to what's left of the hospital. A child hands you a strip of cloth, once a shirt, now a bandage. You wrap it around his shoulder. He grips your wrist and whispers, "Don't stop." So you don't. You help until there's no one left to help, until the chapel is ash, until the flag, once handmade by women, stitched with stars and a cross, is torn from the rooftop. And still, it's not over. The defenders retreat to caves, ravines, burned out homes. They shoot from windows with borrowed rifles, rusted barrels, stones, even nails wrapped in cloth. You crawl through smoke, lungs raw, skin blistered from heat. You see a man light a Bible on fire, not in rage, but as a torch. It's the only light left. By the second day of the final assault, there are fewer than 100 defenders. By the third, fewer than 50. You are among them, starving, dry-mouthed, eyes bloodshot, but alive. The Republic takes the center of Canudos. The soldiers raise their rifles, plant flags, shout victory songs. But every time they think it's over, a shot comes from the rubble. A child hurls a rock from a rooftop. A woman stabs a soldier with a splintered broom handle. They call it fanaticism. You call it refusal. The army drags prisoners into the open square. Men, women, even children. They're lined up, interrogated, accused. Where are the weapons? Where are the monarchists? Where is the priest? There are no answers, because none of it was true. There were no monarchists, no foreign conspirators, no armed insurrection. Just a town, just people, who believed something else was possible. Historians later argue over numbers. Some say 15,000 died in the siege. Others say less, or more. No one agrees on the final count. But you were there. You remember the names, the faces, the boy with the broken musket, the woman with the machete, the blind man who sang. And you remember the moment when it ends, when the last defender is shot, a man with one arm, one eye, and no ammunition. He stands in the doorway of a half-collapsed hut, lifts his empty rifle like a banner, and charges. He's gunned down before he takes 3 steps. And that's it. The Republic declares victory. Canudos is gone, but in your chest, something is still burning. You survive. You don't know how. Maybe it's chance. Maybe it's cowardice. Maybe it's faith holding on by its fingernails. They find you in the rubble, barely conscious, covered in ash and blood. Someone pulls you out by the wrist. You expect to die right then, but the bullet never comes. Instead, they drag you to what used to be the town square. It's a pile of bones now. Flies buzz in the heat. Smoke still curls from the earth. Bodies line the streets like spilled dominoes. They sit you with the others. Survivors, if that's what you can be called. A few dozen left, mostly women, children. The broken. The soldiers don't cheer anymore. Their uniforms are torn, their eyes hollow. Even victory tastes like mud. A commander reads off a proclamation. The rebellion is over. The Republic stands. No one answers, because no one believes it. They order the survivors to bury the dead. You dig again, this time not for protection, but for peace. Your hands, already torn from months of labor, bleed anew. You bury the boy with the musket, the girl with the hymn book, the mother who taught you to braid rope. You bury Conselheiro again. What's left of him? The soldiers unearthed his grave. Some say they burned his body. Others say they paraded his skull through the streets of Bahia. Historians still debate what happened to his remains. But you remember his voice. And that's what matters. The Republic wants to erase him. Erase Canudos. Turn it into a cautionary tale, a footnote, a freak show. So they build their own narrative. The newspapers spin it as a cleansing, a victory for order. The priests claim heresy has been crushed. Politicians toast to democracy. But in the backlands, people tell a different story. Whispers travel from village to village. They speak of a man who walked barefoot with a book. A town where no one starved unless everyone did. A dream that defied bullets. They say Canudos didn't fall. It ascended. And maybe in a way it did. You're sent to a prison camp outside Juazeiro. The guards don't speak to you. The food is worse than nothing. Some prisoners die within days. Others disappear at night. But you stay quiet. And you remember. Because someone has to. Years later, you'll walk through the ruins again. You'll find the chapel's broken stones, half buried in dry earth. You'll pick up a fragment of blue cloth, faded, sun-bleached. It once belonged to Conselheiro's robe. You'll press it to your face and sit there for hours. And you'll promise, never out loud, but deep in your chest, this story will not vanish, because they burned the buildings, they crushed the walls, they silenced the songs, but they didn't kill the truth, and they never will. You're released on a Tuesday, no ceremony, No explanation. Just a grunt from the guard, a shove through the gate, and a dusty road stretching into nowhere. You're thinner now. Skin clings to bone. You move like someone twice your age, but you're alive. And for the first time in months, the world is quiet. Too quiet. You walk for hours, days maybe, through scrubland and broken fences, past abandoned farms where wild goats chew fence posts and vultures circle overhead. Eventually, you find people. They stare at you like you're a ghost. Some nod, some look away. One woman, older than dirt and blind in one eye, hands you a hunk of dried cassava and says softly, "You came from Canudos, didn't you?" You nod. She just presses the food into your hands and says, "Then you carry something we lost." You don't eat for a while. You just sit under a tree and let the wind move through your hair. You start hearing things again. Not hallucinations, just echoes. Hammers against stone, children laughing, a distant voice calling water from the well. Canudos never really leaves you. In fact, you start to realize it's everywhere. Because the people who fled before the siege, they scattered like seeds. They didn't stop believing. They just started believing elsewhere. Little communities rise in the hills, quiet, simple, humble, no coins, no masters, shared bread and old psalms. They don't call themselves Canudos, but you recognize the shape. You settle in one of them, a place with no name, just people and work. You patch roofs, carve tools, tell stories, but not all at once. Because when you say Conselheiro, people lean in. When you describe the chapel, their eyes close like they can see it. And when you speak of the end, what it was really like, some of them weep, others smile. "You were part of it," they whisper, "part of the holy place." You try to correct them, to say it wasn't holy, that it was hunger and fire and grief. But they already know. That's the point. They're not romanticizing Canudos. They're honoring it. They know the truth, that a place where no one went hungry alone, where justice didn't wear a uniform, where prayers and sweat built homes from clay, that place matters, even if it ended in ash. Historians later struggle with this part. Some call Canudos a tragedy, others call it a rebellion. A few even call it terrorism. They pore over army reports, cross-check dates, argue over maps, but they never sit beside the fire with you and listen. They never ask how it felt, and that's why they'll never understand. Because Canudos wasn't about kings, or war, or glory. It was about faith, in each other, in fairness, in something bigger than borders. And even if it was burned down, the idea didn't die. You live it, every day, quietly, without fanfare. You carry water, hammer nails, hold babies, sing old hymns, and sometimes when the wind hits just right, you swear you hear the voice of Conselheiro, soft and clear. Hold fast. And you do, because no flag, no cannon, no republic can take that from you. Years pass. The land doesn't forget. Even though maps erase it, even though textbooks avoid it, you remember, and so do others. Every so often, someone comes walking through your village. A traveler, dusty and sunburned, asking quiet questions. Did you know him? Was it really as big as they say? Was it a miracle? You never answer the same way twice. Sometimes you say it was a town made of clay and prayer. Sometimes you say it was a furnace that burned everything away except what mattered. Sometimes you just sit and say nothing, letting the silence speak louder than facts ever could. You don't wear the old robe. You don't chant in the streets. But you live what Canudos taught. You share what you have. You help when help is needed. You speak truth even when it's heavy. And you listen. Because that's what Conselheiro did best. He didn't just preach, he heard. One afternoon, you hear that someone built a cross where the chapel once stood. Not a big one, just a plank of driftwood tied with vines. A shepherd boy left it there. Said his grandmother told him about the holy place where people stood together. You walk there. It takes 3 days. The wind cuts harder now. The earth has shifted. The old paths are gone. But you find it. The valley. The bones of the past. Canudos. Nothing but stones and memories. And that cross. You sit beside it. Run your fingers over the cracked wood. You remember the marketplace. The laughter. The smell of fresh bread. The way dusk made the hills glow gold. You close your eyes and hear it all again. Not perfectly, but enough. A soldier once said nothing grew in that place. He was wrong. You grew. The people did. And in the years since, across the Northeast, in villages and farms, something else took root. Stories, quiet ones, told by grandmothers over beans, murmured by firelight, shared during droughts and harvests alike. They don't use the word Canudos, But they speak of a place where no one was alone, where justice came with sandals, not swords, where even when the sky fell, the people stood. It echoes in every fair deal, every shared cup, every act of compassion that outlives cruelty. You sit beside that cross until the stars come out. You hum the old hymn. And when you rise, your legs ache, but your spine straightens. Because though the Republic buried Canudos, it couldn't bury you. And it couldn't bury what you carry. Your hands shake when you tie knots. Your knees creak when you kneel to light a fire. You forget names sometimes, but not his. Not Conselheiro. Not the place where your life split in two, before Canudos, after Canudos. You sit most days in a rough wooden chair under a thatched roof, carving shapes into the edge of a clay bowl. Children come to sit by you. Not your children, just children. They bring questions like dried mangoes, wrinkled on the outside, sweet when you bite in. Did you really live in the town with no money? Is it true no one stole anything? Were you scared? You smile, you nod. You say, yes, and also, not really. You tell them about building walls with your bare hands, about roasting yams over coals beside women you never met before that week, about sleeping on rooftops and watching the sky turn copper at dawn. You tell them about the singing that surprises them most. They think Canudos was only fire and fighting, but it was mostly singing. They lean in close when you tell them about Conselheiro's voice, how he spoke like the ground humming, how he never told people what to believe, only reminded them they could. Sometimes you sketch the chapel in the dirt with a stick, just the outline, just enough to imagine it. And when you're done, the children ask, why did it have to end? You never have a perfect answer. You just say, because the world didn't know what to do with us. And maybe that's the truest thing. The Republic knew how to govern towns, train armies, crush uprisings, but it didn't know what to do with a village that chose bread over gold, prayer over politics, dignity over obedience. Canudos wasn't dangerous because it had weapons. It was dangerous because it worked. Flawed, chaotic, exhausting, but working. And that scared them, so they ended it, or tried to. Because even now, in your little house under the wide sky, Canudos lives. In the stories, in the choices, in the way people still build for each other, not just themselves. The final time you visit the old valley, your steps are slow, your breath shallow. The wind has reshaped the hills. The ruins are softer now, half swallowed by time. But the cross still stands, weathered, bowed, silent. You rest your hand on it and whisper, we held fast. And for a moment, the wind stops. Just long enough for you to feel it. Not grief, not loss, but pride. Because you helped build something no one can truly destroy. Not even with fire. Not even with silence. Not even with time. Wind down. So now, as the candles burn low and the shadows stretch across your room like gentle fingers, take a deep breath. Let the story fall quiet around you. Let the dust settle on the roads of Canudos and the hammer fall still against stone. You've walked through fire tonight, through hunger and hope, through battles fought not for conquest, but for conviction. You've heard the voice of a man who carried no sword, wore no crown, but built a kingdom in the hearts of the forgotten, a kingdom made of clay, prayer, and unshakable belief. And though that kingdom crumbled, though the world tried to bury it beneath lies and smoke, something stayed. You. Because if you listened closely, you heard the truth. That no dream, no matter how small, how strange, how fiercely opposed, truly dies. It plants itself in stories, in memory, in kindness shared long after the flames. So close your eyes now. Let the last echoes of Canudos drift away like candle smoke on the wind. Breathe slow. You're safe, you're seen, and maybe, just maybe, you carry a little of that hidden republic with you. A whisper of something better. A reason to hold fast. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.